you say. So, oh, hello, Craig.
So yeah, go ahead and ask your question again. Perspective philosophy.
I'm just saying, like, what is wrong with going to metaethics anyway? Like, I don't understand. Like, this is like the problem is that everyone here is talking past one another, and the way that we resolve that is get to the foundations of our points and talk about those, because otherwise, then we're using words, but none of them actually mean anything to each other. So what?
Actually, I agree with perspective philosophy. I think we should talk about the meat and potatoes here, right? We should talk about what we disagree about.
Which is completely ironic, because you're assigning your own subjective around, what we're talking about doesn't mean anything. Why does your stance override mine in terms of,
No, what I'm saying is
my stance. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go for it, man.
No, I was just saying my stance doesn't override anyone else's. I'm just saying that it seems to be the case that people think certain ways about the external world, situations they've come across, other people, and various scenarios, situations, circumstances, ideas, and that we all have those ideas, and that there's no way to verify an objective fact of the matter about a way to think about these things, because we're all different, and we all have
a complete appeal to futility. A complete appeal to futility.
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, what he was arguing,
it is because
because he'd be making basically an error theorist point. I think that's what he's.
No, it is an appeal to futility, because it's basically saying, oh well, we don't know, so we may as well perpetuate as much harm as possible.
No, I think what he was saying is we can't know.
I guess I could say, I don't really think that there's knowing about this. I don't really think that morality is a useful category. I really think all it is people like and dislike things, and really we bicker about what we like and dislike, and there may be some haggling that goes on towards some people with certain genetic predilections, but beyond that, there's
absolutely, and I agree 100%. I don't.
Oh my God!
I don't think laws or what have you, or moral wrongdoing, should be based on like and dislike.
Well, no. What? Wait a minute. Wait, how can you agree with what he said and then?
Wait, what? I'm confused.
Because what he said there was that there is only like and dislike, and then what you said is that we shouldn't. So you don't agree.
Liking something equivocate to the suffering and pain that you cause on someone. Well, I don't like watching slaughterhouse.
But he doesn't necessarily have to care. I think that's his point. Like, if you would take a Nietzschean stance, you'd say, like, why, like, fundamentally, what is wrong? Like, and actually use the word wrong. Like, tell me exactly the fundamentals of what wrongdoing is. And what he's saying is that there is no objective verification of wrong, because it sounds like he's coming from a place of error theory or maybe logical positivism, where he's saying that.
Oh my gosh, he said like and dislike. He said nothing about moral wrongdoings. Let's keep it straight here.
Okay.
Look, I really do think, though, that fundamentally what morality is that people have likes and dislikes, right? That they have certain predilections neurologically towards certain sensory phenomena, etc., that they have, ideas, whatever. And this is what morality is. Yeah, right?
He's a I mean, he sounds like a non-cognitivist. Would you say that's about right, Zycron?
Yeah, I'm a non-cognitivist.
Yeah.
Yes, but liking and disliking something is not equivocated to moral wrongdoing, is it?
No, well, what he's saying is that there's no such thing as wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so his argument is totally invalid.
What the fuck?
What?
That's not how it works, Kirby. We can't just be like, this is wrong because he disagrees with me. That's just ridiculous.
Why? Hitchens razor, that like.
Wait. Hitchens razor. Wait. Hitchens razor. You think Hitchens?
Yes, because he's asserting something without. I can dismiss it without evidence.
Well, that's because we've got to be evidence, because you haven't taught the metaethics yet. So
God.
like no, but that's the whole point. So like Zycron, like if from what I get, like your position is that something can't be verified or falsified because there is no external object of moral good in which to point towards and go, this is actually the good, and therefore we can't come to a meaningful statement about what is good, bad, right, and wrong.
Like,
So
I mean, let me go ahead and just look. I'm inductively a non-cognitivist, right? But technically, I'm
Inductively,
post-positivist.
lol.
But technically, I'm post-positivist, right? Because I don't outright dismiss the idea that there could be some things that I don't know about the universe, including that within that framework is moral truths as well. So I'd say ultimately I'm agnostic, but I'm de facto non-cognitivist. So yeah, I'd say sure that from what I know, that seems to be the case at my position. From what I know,
would you not
about the
agree
world.
that? Would you not agree
I'm a
that anything?
materialist.
Would you not agree that anything beyond an expression of your mental states would therefore be absurdity? So talking any moral statement would lead to absurdity. So you couldn't say that you actually agreed or disagreed with any given statement. All you could describe is your mental states at a given time and not prescribe upon yourself a way of being, a lifestyle, or any de facto
Yeah.
position. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Seems pretty reasonable to me.
I mean, I mean, I think you're wrong. But I mean, like,
Exactly. You
I
know,
don't
and
really
this
see
is
what's
this is
wrong
what I
about
mean. It's
no,
like
no,
you've
no,
been
no,
part of.
no. Oh no. I think that's a fair stance to have. I'm not saying that you're like. It's not like I'm not laughing because I think you're being unreasonable. Because like I mean, Dave up here, I think he's a moral descriptivist. You know what I mean? And he's doing a PhD in philosophy. There's nothing that's actually
Yeah, but
like
can we not appeal
absurd
to
about the
authority?
position.
Can we not appeal to PhD? Like, can we not appeal to
What?
authority?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just saying that I don't think he's being unreasonable. I just don't think. I think that his position's not ridiculous. I think he's wrong. I've just expressed that. Like, I mean, I'm just being courteous. I mean, like, can we not have a normal conversation as
Yeah,
two humans?
you're being charitable.
I'm being.
He's just talking to me.
PhDs and all that sort of thing, because if we want to
What
go
do you mean
down that route,
PhDs?
then, you know.
No, I was just being nice. Anyway, the thing is that like the point is, I would say that like that we can talk cognitively about what is common experience, and I think there is a common moral domain, at least a common experiential domain, and I think Wittgenstein makes that point, you know, in which, you know, private language is impossible, and I think that's his point. Like, we wouldn't be able to understand and I wouldn't be able to apply a concept to our mental states if they weren't part of an objective domain, rather that or a common domain, rather, that could be understood between humans. Just like a blind person would struggle, or would be incapable of applying a concept accurately of sight towards their qualitative
Dude,
experience.
you are seriously making a complete straw man and completely assuming what his, you know.
Are you trolling or something? Is she trolling?
Yes, you are, and you're being an apologist. Why are you being such an apologist?
What do you mean? I'm directly attacking non-cognitivism right now.
I know, but it doesn't sound like you're attacking it. It actually sounds like you're, you know.
Am I too polite?
Look,
Yes.
I don't think that moral truths can be in the same way that like scientific truths can be sussed out between one another. I don't think that they can be sussed out, because it seems to be the case that, to me, all morality is an individual's like or dislike of something at the end of the day.
Well,
It seems to be the case that somebody has a predilection, that these larger, grander construction of ideas are just adopted on group because of circumstance, prior scenarios, etc. You know, I mean, it seems to be the case that all it is just.
So if I was to say,
it's subjective, it's opinion. It's
because what if I was to say that we could point towards an individual? Like, I mean, okay, I'll try and like boil this back. So I guess like your criticism of cognitivism here would be that morality is subjective because it's based on opinion, and what you're saying is based on opinion here, if I may like extrapolate, is that like if morality is the way that if ethics is the way in which we govern our behaviors, you know, and morality is the judgment between right and wrong, you'll say that the judgment between right and wrong is based on an interpretation of your own likes and dislikes, your own like mental, states, and then from that point you come to a conclusion of how to live your life, and that's where like the ethics is subjective. Now, what I would say is that when we judge how to live our lives, it's not based upon our likes and dislikes, and instead based upon how to achieve what would be. Well, I mean, it has an aspect of that in it with subjectivity. We try and achieve that which is good by definition. I think what you called Ayn Rand makes this point. We're all trying to achieve like that which is desirable. Happiness, and the issue is that if we assume what that happiness is, if we make that assumption, we have already entered absurdity. Now, would you agree with that? Do you think that if we were to say that something like, let's say, I will be happy if X, would you say that would be an absurd statement if non-cognitivism was true?
I wouldn't say it's an absurd statement if non-cognitivism is true.
But how could you say it was anything other, because you've already pointed toward an aspect? I mean, you could say that perhaps that we could misinterpret the statement, and that the statement is no longer truth apt, and that what it is an expression of belief. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Okay, right, fair enough. So, like, in which case, we are in an aspect of absurdity when we're trying to actually achieve any sorts of goods. There is no.
I would say so. I mean, outside of like more pragmatic views of ends, and like barring some absurd hypotheticals of like some terrible genius that you could like plot out scenarios, but yeah.
I think it's very interesting. I mean, like, I very much disagree, but I would say that when we look at, like, for example, the object in question, which is ourselves, I would say that there is a definite good and bad. Like, there is a qualitative experience of being, and I think that we can all agree that we all experience an active a presence of subjectivity. And I think that within that subjectivity, there is a positive and negative experience. But how we characterize that positive and negative experience is where we're kind of confronting one another. You're saying that we can't characterize it, and I'm saying that we can. Because I would say that the way that I would characterize my experiences have to exist in a linguistic plane for them to be an experience of something in the first place. Either that, or it would be unintelligible to me, because I wouldn't be able to apply a concept to it. It wouldn't be an object of my experience. Do you see what I'm saying? So what I'm arguing against here is private language. I'm saying that as a non-cognitivist, that to even have unless you're saying that this is purely expressive and that there is nothing. I'm arguing against cognitivism, actually, I guess, subjective cognitivism. But I guess as a non-cognitivist, or you could say that there was a purely expression. What I'm saying is that expression, you could understand those mental states regardless, because they are common, and that we could speak about them. So I could say that, like, I know I have good reason to think that if you were to start smoking, that that it might be a bad for you, because the good experiences that you may feel from smoking will not equate to the negative experiences that you will have in regards to lung cancer later. And I can make that claim because you are a human being, and I can rationally deduce that you will suffer, the pains of lung cancer. Right?
Boom.
Well, I'm not done, but thanks.
Seriously though, and the way that you're explaining it is completely logical. How anyone can argue against that is, but I'm hanging on by a thread to hear it.
I've reached a point when I don't know if you're actually serious. If I'm being trolled to shit, like, help someone. Is anyone SD? Have you got any input here? Am I being trolled to shit? I don't know.
Well, I don't think you're being trolled. Not for a moment. Kevin
No, not
is
at all.
actually serious.
I think it's completely logical.
Yeah, maybe a vitamin deficiency, guys.
Vitamin deficiency though.
No, but
Zycron,
Zycron, why would you disagree though?
I mean, look, can you give me a summary? argument again? I can give you a response. Just a summary, like a quick.
Oh my god, he
argument
literally
agree.
just like laid it out on the table for the last 5 minutes, and you're asking for. Oh
You
my
don't think
gosh.
that it? Hey, it's common courtesy to.
It's all right, man. Like what I was basically saying is that when we speak about what is good and bad for someone, what we are talking about is an expression of that phenomenological experience, and that phenomenological experience is constructed of ideals which are linguistic in nature, and that is a common plane of existence for us to speak about it. So when you make an expression in regards to your happiness, I can understand that as an expression of happiness in the first place because we can apply concepts to it, which is why boo hurrah theory works in the first place. I understand boo as bad and hurrah as good. And because I can understand that you have a positive and negative experience, and that you as a human can be characterized as having positive and negative experiences given certain stimuli. And so what I can say is that the good life for you will somewhat be in respect of the good life for man. And because the good life for man would entail that you should avoid certain pains which would come about or be entailed by certain actions, I can say that you should avoid committing certain actions because it would negatively impact the positive experiences of life in which you seek to achieve.
Yeah, look, this
Got all
only
that,
seems to
Zycron?
be the case. Yeah, this seems to only be the case for like 80% of the population or so, right? Like you have like deviations within this, and most of that could be.
Oh yeah, but then I would say that there would be a conceptual flaw in case we haven't characterized the nature of man correctly.
Well, I mean, clearly there's too many deviations to characterize one nature of man. There's plenty of natures.
Well, I would say that then what we would say is that we would have descriptive psychology. So what we would say is that certain individuals benefit from certain actions and certain that wouldn't. And all we need is to specify, and it becomes a science.
Sure, you could specify and you could put it within the framework, but the framework is subjective.
Well, how would it be subjective? I've just said that it's about objects. Unless you're saying there is no such thing as whole, and that knowledge itself is a social construction.
Well, I mean, look, as far as the descriptive categorization, I don't think that that's necessarily subjective, depending on the correspondence. So, like, what you're saying is, like, X happens to Y person, like a knee injury, let's say, and then that produces, like, a negative utility or whatever, right? And that's, like, the science. Like, I think that's at least acceptable, right?
Right, but then how couldn't you extrapolate from that humans, if they will experience a pain sensation, or humans, like, in quotations, there may be some deviations, like humans accept sadomasochists, for example, or humans that do not have psychology X, should avoid committing acts of self-harm, or should avoid committing acts of danger which would ultimately place them at a greater degree of harm than benefit, in which case it would negatively affect the pain-pleasure ratio of their lives.
I'm sorry, like in neurotypical individuals?
Yeah, I mean, like neurotypical, or I mean, like we'll say neurotypical, but I think that psychology showed that even in neurotypical individuals, there could be even
like
a greater
neurotypical, like a psychopath or something.
Well, I mean, like the point of what I'm getting at is that, like, we can accept that there may be deviations, and that we could characterize these deviations, and that becomes a science.
You could characterize these deviations, but the problem is that you can only science it up so much, and at the end of the day, somebody might just reject the quote unquote science because it's literally just made up rules.
But is science just made up rules? Why would you say science was? That's what I'm saying. Are you rejecting? Are you rejecting epistemology?
I'm not an epistemic nihilist. I'd say that. I mean, like, you have like thought experience, like Descartes' demon. Like, there's no way to 100% verify the experience, right?
Yeah, but why would we care about that? Like, necessarily, like, I understand that there's no 100% way to verify, the given episteme, but we can go from the point that if we accept logic, that there is the most probable case, and that's kind of how we should behave in the first place, because that gives us
But the inquiry here is unnecessary, right? Like, all
how is
you
it
need
unnecessary?
to say, because why do you need to put all these physical stimuli within this paradigm of morals? You have to answer that question. So why do you need to characterize certain actions as being either good or bad? Why not just describe the action and say that you have a personal dislike of said action? That seems to be a lot more accurate.
this
And
idea
look,
of
just to be clear, I understand your argument that it's impossible to not be influenced by those around you, and that fundamentally, that's the way that our societies work, and how they're upheld is through those ideals and through norms, etc. Right? And that basically even the psychopath is probably going to have his path shifted by other people. But ultimately, my argument is that you have certain genetic markers that allow you to interpret those environmental situations in certain ways. And I think that that would be the meaningful thing in the situation, which is that your personal decision is that you come to a like or dislike of something at the end of the day, regardless of those ideals, regardless of all those external factors of which I've previously mentioned.
See, what I would say is that because what I would say is that, and that I understand your point, that what you're saying is that why don't we personally describe the situation that affects us and then seek to resolve that situation the best way we can? So then we'd say that.
No, I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that
So just describe
sure,
it.
you're privy to these environmental factors, and they reinforce some personal beliefs that you may have. You interpret them, you reminisce on them, and you make different life decisions based on that, even potentially, right? But ultimately, it's going to be your genetic hardware, your brain capacity, your internal operations that are going to come to ultimately a like or dislike of something.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not denying that the non-cognitive experience of qualia is not given to us. Like, I would say that's definitely given to us. Like, for example, my ability to, for example, an individual's like this, decision of whether they like being choked or not, because like depending upon the individual, that is a very difference, isn't it? So like some people like pain, like, or quote unquote pain, and some people don't. And like what we can say is that, like, and I think what you're trying to say is that given that, wouldn't it be far easier rather than turn into something like science, like look at it from an individualist aspect and try and understand yourself in a personal regard. Now
that's really what it comes down to anyways, though, because you have deviants in society who would act in this way regardless. Like, I think like for instance, Columbine, right? Like, it's likely that these teens would have likely ended up acting out later on in their life regardless. They probably would have had these violent predilections, irrespective of the environmental situations they were placed in.
I'm not sure
Perhaps
of
they
the
agitated
thought
them.
experiment.
Yeah,
I'm not sure of the thought experiment. I'm sorry if that's any inconvenience, because I don't know who that is. But I think I understand your point anyway. Like, but I guess my point would be that for you to understand it in any way, like to have any kind of knowledge of your own personal self, it would have to be in a common domain. Otherwise, you would be applying a private language to it, in which case knowledge would be impossible, and there would be no knowing yourself, in which case the description would be meaningless. And what I'm saying is that if we can have a description of it, then from that point, we can extrapolate a prescription of how to live our lives. The issue is when we hypothesize that just because we have described a good experience, that we have come to the conclusion of how we should live our lives based upon a value of the experiential value of the qualia of our experience, and that what we have done is we've created a logical error, because what we have done is created a hypothetical value, and when we seek to achieve it, we may actually be trying to achieve something which might not relate to what would be a good life for us. And that's why other people come in. Now, I'm not saying it has to be scientific, like purely scientific. What it has to be is philosophical. So someone say to me, like, Lewis, you've been taking heroin. I don't take heroin, just so you know. But let's say someone was going, Lewis, you're taking heroin a lot here, right? And this is going to have a negative impact upon you, because this moment of experience you may have characterized as good is in fact a negative experience disguised as good, because you can experience an aspect of good within it. And what we are driven towards, non-cognitively, might not necessarily benefit or drive towards what is good in the first place. And what we cannot help but to achieve is this, quote unquote, good experience. But we cannot assume what that is. We must logically deduce it, and deduction operates within a collective sphere of existence.
The problem, though, is that you can deductively come to conclusions, and you could write it all out for them. But the problem is the number value assessments, right? Because the heroin addict may be likely, and probably is likely, to put a lot of emphasis on certain qualities of their subjective experience that you don't place emphasis on. So
I mean,
this
what
idea that,
would I use to?
and certainly this goes back to subjective experience, of which I think that you're not placing enough emphasis on, especially in the heroin scenario. I mean, come on,
Oh,
there's no
I
way of
understand. I
knowing.
understand. No, well, what I would say is that if we accept knowledge to be the case about certain features of the world, let's say the effects of heroin upon the brain, then I would have certain things to consider. So I'd understand that the rationality of the heroin addict had been compromised. I could understand that the value of the heroin to the heroin addict could be very great. I also could understand that if materialism is true, and that the brain actually operates the way we do, that it's theoretically possible to measure the pain and pleasure scenario of the given individual, and that they may, and not only that, we could also ask the heroin addict whether they want to die young. We could also ask the heroin addict whether they value, whatever, and whether that would contradict their, quote unquote value of heroin. And this is the point, like
So you're telling me that your grand way of getting to people is to give them a logical philosophy test. I mean, I think I've never I mean, this is a prime example of why people laugh when they say that I've gotten a degree in philosophy. This is why, even though I personally like philosophy, I probably never
no, but look at it like this.
Philosophy, because
you see it like this, but I see it as like how we would word it wouldn't be like this. And look at CBT. The whole point of like something like CBT therapy is to kind of rationalize outward desires. Like various forms of therapy are made so that we can rationalize out the non-cognitive experiences which plague our being, in order to overcome to
give them a test that's like, I'm just waiting for the contradiction. I'm just waiting for their contradiction so I can point it out.
No. You see, it's not about that. That's sophism. Like the point of philosophy is to find the contradiction, but then together to seek the truth. And what I'm trying to argue for is to remove them from self. It's from a notion of like absolute self-satisfaction and put them into the ethical sphere in which we try to seek that which is valuable, independent of their own psychoanalytic state. Which is why, like, a lot of psychoanalysts will say the point of psychoanalysis is to remove the individual from themselves so that they can act in a way that will no longer cause them self-inflicted harm, so that they can try to find happiness, because happiness exists outside of one's own restricted experience or qualified experience. Like they may be looking through the world through rose-tinted glasses or shit-tinted glasses, for example, and that may need resolved in order for them to achieve that life that they wish to live in the first place. And it's by giving them this opportunity that you free them from themselves.
So look, I certainly think that you can use degree of rationalization when you're sitting down with like a heroin addict, right? And you could lead them towards the quote unquote right position, right? But look, I don't really see what this is illustrating. I don't see how this is reinforcing your larger points. I mean, look, still fundamentally, I disagree, right? Which
again, fair enough. I mean, I'm not going to convince you.
I don't think that you can just essentially make up a science.
I don't make it up.
Like a moral science.
The science of right.
Something that's essentially so subjective. I mean,
it's not.
What is right and wrong has something that's. What is right and what is wrong has been like a huge question forever.
No, yeah, but so is what is the universe like fundamentally constituted of is being a fundamental question. It's just what sciences are easier to do. Hegel. I think actually was it Mill that says the science of mathematics is pretty much finished.
Do you think that ideas are real or something, or do you think like I'm trying to understand your position of like what do you think morality fundamentally is? What is morality? Is morality just because to my knowledge all we are is a bunch of independent brains, a bunch of independent creatures with sentience.
Well, we can
Any collective ideas of which we may have don't seem to have any physical, realm aside from physically being stored in the memory of our brain and being passed along generation to generation to generation. Right?
You know,
That's
for
how
someone that
history
says that they
works.
don't, someone says I don't like science so much, that science is subjective, you seem to appeal to physicalism a lot, and this notion that the physical is more valuable, and I think that's an aesthetic ideal. So,
Certainly.
yeah. So, like, what I would say is that in this given scenario, would I say that an idea is real? Well, I think that, of course, an idea is real. It doesn't mean that because it depends on what you're characterizing as real and imaginary. I mean, if we say that it is imaginary, well, yes, of course, an idea is imaginary. But if you're saying that an idea does not exist, well, of course, it doesn't exist because we are experiencing. That's the end of Cartesian doubt. The idea has to exist for it to be a part of experience. That's kind of by definition. So, for us to even speak of it, for us to even speak of the notion of an idea, that would be impossible if I was to say that ideas weren't real. But I think I understand what you're saying. What you're saying is that, or am I saying that ideas are part of the physical world? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I think there's people like Strawson who argue that the physical states of our brain are actually physically represented. If we agree with physicalism, then it would all be within our brain and then therefore measurable and therefore like something that exists. That's not the position I'm taking anyway, because I would say that for us to even come to that conclusion, there has been concepts applied to the world, and that what the world is fundamentally a combination of conceptualization with essence. I think Hegel describes it as, or the qualia, or the sense datum which is provided to our brains, and what we are doing is constantly applying a concept to reality in order to uncover what that reality is, which is why as we better understand reality, the phenomena of our experience is somewhat modified by it, because we were able to look deeper into it and understand it more effectively. We're able to characterize it more greatly. So I may be able to characterize, like I might have said cats, and now I might be able to say lions, and then from lions I might be able to say like various like breeds and differences within lions, and so on like that, and that might give me a different way of understanding each given form that I'm seeing, and that's kind of where I would say like the metaphysical point I'm making at is that we live in a world of phenomena. Now, what would I say that the good of ethics is? The good of ethics is allowing me to characterize the object of my experience of self, which is like my experience of self, to a greater degree, so that I can prescribe behaviors within my constantly flowing experience, continuing on to the world. So I'd say that I'm trying to achieve that which is most desirable. How I do that is dependent upon my knowledge of self and my knowledge of the environment in which I'm in. The greater that knowledge is, so the more effective the concepts I apply to the world are, and I would get greater concepts through logical deduction, the more knowledge I can come to and the greater I can live my life. Therefore, I should try and understand the world to the greatest degree, so that I can live the best life possible.
Yeah, I don't have the same goals.
You see, I think that by definition you do.
Why would you think that?
I would say that you're an individual, you're a human, you're a subjective agent, so you try to see that which is the qualitative experience. The qualitative experience is defined by an experience of, positive and negative. If you're experiencing a variation of positive and negative, you will flee the negative and seek the positive by definition, because otherwise it wouldn't be positive or negative. The better way that you characterize the positive experience, let's say your enjoyment of something like a sitcom, or like like tomato ketchup, whatever the hell it may be, allows you to act in such a way that invokes a pleasure experience within your phenomena, the positive. However, we may find that even the most basic characterizations may lead to greater unhappiness, because we lack the knowledge of the moments that are to come. So we would say that we value not just one moment, but we value the moments that will occur, because we will have to experience them. And because of that, I seek to achieve the greatest good throughout my lifespan. And because I seek to achieve the greatest good within my lifespan, I need to understand what is the narrative of my experience in relation to the actions I take. So if I take heroin, I might realize that I may die young, so I don't take heroin. And within this like goal that I've set for myself, I also start to look up, I start to see the contradictions within the greater goal that I've sought for myself. So like I might start to realize that actually that by seeking, for example, the longest life possible, or by seeking the most pleasurable life possible, or however I've characterized it, will be fundamentally mistaken. And what I have done is created a hypothetical value. And because you've created a hypothetical value based upon your own decision-making process or your own rationality, which uses the concepts that we have in a common sphere, but applies them independent of any other critique, what you've done is you've created your own pocket of language which you cannot verify or falsify. So what you actually seek to do, what you've actually done is you've isolated yourself from deduction. And so what I say that ethics is the ability to remove those contradictions within of value and what is valuable, using in the institutions of our society to verify and falsify each other's positions and debate and discuss what is valuable in the first place. And what I would argue that what we'll come to the conclusion of
That
so
could
far,
just be that could be persuaded by environmental factors. You do understand?
well, yeah, I mean that's Marx even made
Like
the point.
I'm serious. Like given like a hurricane could hit at the wrong place, and the whole like measure of like what is right and what is wrong could be influenced. The conclusion of such moral questions could be influenced by literally such an act, a literal hurricane. I mean, that
Well,
could
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, but like,
you're so you're advocating that we essentially. I mean, that's
No,
that's
he's
sort of
not
ridiculous.
advocating that at all. Basically, that is what is a logic.
so like let's say
No. He said we're using society to build
Yeah, so
these ideas and reinforce them between one another. Well,
you
that
chose to cherry pick
society doesn't
one little,
always come to right
you
conclusions.
chose
My
oh,
you
absolutely.
chose to cherry pick one little thing out of the whole entire discourse that he was saying to validate your argument. Does that not ring untrue
well,
or
well,
I
dishonest
think
to you?
it seems to be the case. Oh, okay,
I think
Kirby, it seems to be the case that if I'm going to retort to somebody, right, that if I'm going to make a singular point and that you interject that,
Yeah,
right,
it's called cherry picking. It's called cherry picking, and cherry picking
without
is like
allowing me to
usually looked down
further
upon.
extrapolate upon other points, that you would be making
Cherry
an
picking.
assumption about the way that I'd be responding to his argumentation.
Basically, the way that perspective philosophy has argued this is, if you don't understand that and you've chosen to cherry pick one little thing.
Oh, I don't know what happened there.
You've defeated it.
Right.
Look. I don't think I've defeated his argument. I think we just fundamentally disagree, right? Like he thinks that we
No,
can.
you don't fundamentally
we can-
disagree, because to fundamentally disagree would to be disagreeing with the whole argument that he has put forth. You have
that's fine disagreeing with.
chosen to cherry pick one little thing that he has said to support your own argument, which is based on
Look,
a house of cards.
I fundamentally disagree with the notion
Right,
that
start.
we can construct these invisible systems societally
It's
that are
it's
going
it's
to be
inferred.
anything
It's
that are,
inferred.
hold on, that are going to be anything less than some people's subjective assessment and opinion, right, being legislated onto the majority, right? I don't think
Where
that's going to
has
be
anyone spoken about
anything less than
legislating?
that.
I think if I may, like Zycron, I think I understand his point, and I think it's actually Marx's critique of Hegel. So Marx, like if I understand this correctly, what you're saying is that there could be influential factors upon the institutions themselves outside of the individual assessment upon this objectification of the good in the first place, or the right. So what we'd be saying is that, well, we could be judging about what is the right behavior, but in fact something like a power structure, and this is what Marx's point is, could be constructing the institution, and then we all join the institution. So you'd be saying like we all join it and we start having discourse, but in fact there is a power play operating in which is influencing individuals rather than being influenced by the individuals in the first place. And that's why like you would have one subjective position overpowering the majority.
That's certainly a way you can frame it, but I literally think, I think that any institution could be co-opted, right? So
yeah, I mean that's the whole point. Like that's well, that's one thing I was going to say is like, should we say that science is subjective then?
Yeah, should we? I mean, look, I certainly think that there's some degree of subjectivity within science, right?
Well,
Of course
I think there is some.
Of course
Yeah, I would
there
agree, but that's the whole point. Like, what we are seeking is to remove the subjectivity as far as
Exactly.
possible.
No,
And what,
but I disagree though. I think the subjectivity is better than what you're painting it, and I think that the subjectivity is what makes life beautiful. I think I truly, I mean, in my opinion, at least.
no, no,
Okay,
So that's a subjective
I-
aesthetic, but I mean, honestly,
subjectively
I
agree with rape. So does that make it beautiful? I
Well,
subjectively
you
agree
can
with
certainly
rape.
think
So
so.
does that mean it's
I
beautiful?
think what you're
Do you not
You can
wrongfully
certainly
doing.
think that.
I think what you're both wrongfully doing here is characterizing that this is a rejection of subjectivity. What this is the appreciation of it. Because, I mean, if you look at a Hegelian point, what he's saying is that if we were to assume that freedom, and what he says is freedom, and I mean freedom of the will, not necessarily free will. So if you say that freedom is the ability to hold a position that is neither caused by another stimuli, as in like Marx's case, where it's a power play over us, and our moral opinions are constructed by another individual, and it is neither to be or caused by our nature. So, for example, that we've assumed what is good and bad in the first place, but also that it not only has to be uncaused, but also must be unrestricted, and that we are actually trying to achieve that which we desire. The point is to relieve the contradiction in the first place. What we are trying to do is maximize subjectivity, and that's the beauty of it. We accept that subjectivity is valuable, but that subjectivity, if left to a subjective framework, would lack the universalization of concepts, which would remove the contradictions in an individual's will, which allow them to have a good life and live a life in which they would be able to see themselves in the first place. What you are is the mediation between your desires. If we say that what you are is purely your desires and that you have no way of critiquing yourself, then you don't hold yourself as an object. You're unable to self-evaluate, and in which case your subjectivity is lost, and all there is a non-autonomous agent. So, if anything, this is a celebration of subjectivity. It's an appreciation of subjectivity, and it's just a dismissal of subjectivism.
Yeah, I mean, look, I certainly understand what you're trying to say. You're saying we should institutionalize morality in the same way that we have science, and we should streamline these subjective values, and we should apply them to society through laws, etc., and maximize what we find to be societally, given like democracy, etc., that we can define what is right and what is wrong, and we can, like I said, create laws based on that, etc. Like, I certainly see what you're saying, right? I would not like to see that world again because of the fallibility of what would be instituted in that society, right?
I think it's ironic.
Furthermore, I certainly think that to the degree at which you have the genetic variance and people having completely uniquely different views of different stimuli, I think that you really can't universalize it, especially in the society that you have now. Maybe in a post-eugenics society or something, you could institute this when we're all very similar to one another, but given the variance, I'd say it'd be incredibly hard. You'd have some problems in implementation there. It's like the drug war.
See,
you just can't control people's life to this extent.
I don't think it's about. This is the whole point. It would be self. It has to be self. It has to be self done in the first place for it to be.
So then it really does just come down to the subjective will of the person.
Because look at it like this. Like it's the application of linguistic concepts upon the self. These concepts are given to you, and they're separate. But it is the concepts in which we approve. Like the subjective application will always be subjective, which is why Hegel says that morality is subjective in the first place, and he says that ethics is the objective. Now, if we were to say as well that this idea of fallibility is the problem, well, is it not ironic that we would dismiss a theory of right because it is possibly fallible, and it is most definitely fallible, because if we take Popper's point that even something like science never reaches the truth but only comes closer to the truth, then what we would say is that we are rejecting all knowledge because there holds some falsehood, and in which case is it not ironic that we reject that knowledge itself on the point of fallibility, and yet lead us to a point of absurdity where knowledge itself and any rational decision-making process becomes impossible. So it would be contradictory to reject it on a point of fallibility, because we would only be committing an act of self-harm. We would be saying that by choosing not to apply this concept, that I have worsened the possibility of coming to the conclusion that I will actually gain happiness. I choose not to do that, rather than acting within the ethical sphere to relieve the contradictions that may negatively affect your own happiness. I'm going to go and grab another beer, guys, if that's all.
Manny,
feel
you're
that.
telling me you're drinking.
I'm drinking, man. Having some
Oh, I can't
Brewdog
believe this.
Elvis juice. Now, what can I say? I'm an objective hypocrite, that's what.
Oh, this is shocking, man. Shocking.
While we're at it, I'm gonna smoke the
I
rest of
noticed.
my
I noticed
I
Footsoldier
know,
in
but
the
man.
chat as well. So, Footsoldier, I mean, if you want to say something, man.
Yeah, get on the alcohol-free beers, man. Alcohol-free is the way to go.
Better yet, smoke that bud, dude. Smoke that bud.
I don't know about this alcohol-free stuff. I mean,
I think I'd rather have a Coke if I'm like, or something like. I like have an alcohol. Take something that I think tastes a bit nicer. And like with smoking weed, like I used to smoke weed quite a bit, but like my family has a propensity towards mental health problems that I'd rather kind of avoid, and I noticed that. Yeah, so I just try and like I've realized that like after smoking it for a while that it was starting to negatively impact us, so I thought I'll cut it down. So if I do smoke, it's very rarely now. But like I do enjoy being high as fuck. It's a shame. Right, I'll be back.
all right, see you in a second.
Wouldn't be drinking a Coke at this time of night.
I don't really get high as fuck anymore. I've like smoked so much that it's just gone.
I don't really see the appeal. I've never really seen the appeal myself.
Sorry, what's up?
I've got to agree with you there, Footsoldier. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't tried it once or twice, but the appeal, I don't get it.
How much did you try of it?
Well, I guess I just had a couple of joints in my younger
couple?
years. Like, yeah, just
Like you
couple,
smoked
I mean.
2 in a row, or like you mean like you smoked them on different occasions?
Oh, different occasions, yeah.
Yeah. Did you smoke a whole joint by yourself?
Probably not, no. It was
Okay.
one of those things where like passed around.
Yeah, it's passed around. Yeah, you didn't actually
And
smoke.
I never really enjoyed it because
Shit, you want to have a bong?
You didn't actually
actually
smoke the SD. Like you need to actually get like your own joint and smoke it and
Want a bong?
pack it in a big.
Is this a no true Welshman fallacy? Is this a no true Welshman fallacy?
No, like I'm serious though. Like if you get it in that small amount, like you're not gonna really have any type of experience.
I've actually had an experience just with passive weed. Like I've just been in a bonged out room and got high myself without even smoking myself.
Yeah, that'd be like hotboxing.
Well,
That's
man,
fun.
I'll tell you what happened to me, and it's not going to be a very exciting story, but all it made me feel was really tired, really thirsty, and really hungry. And I just thought, well, this doesn't really seem like that great a time to me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like.
Yeah, you just didn't smoke enough.
So I
It's
should.
the
first times I had
that would be your recommendation.
You need to smoke a lot. You need to smoke a whole bunch. You need to smoke a copious amount.
I
Yeah,
don't
it's
think
the
so.
same as
I think you
cocaine,
need to
you
have a
can't
bong.
just do
No,
like a-
smoke more than you
Probably
think that you're
not.
capable of smoking. Please.
No, you just need
It's
to.
It's the best
It's the same as
time.
coke.
It's the best time. He'll trip out. He'll have a fun
It's
time.
not
Well,
my
don't
kind of
start
thing.
encouraging people to throw whiteys, man. Fucking hell.
I'd rather just have a couple of beers. I mean, I always enjoyed that a bit more.
No, I definitely think cocaine is a better drug than weed.
That is true.
Cocaine is awesome.
What about heroin,
Cocaine
man?
is so
You know,
good.
You want
shoot up some of that.
MDMA?
Cocaine is not.
Yeah,
on the
I
same
just
level
don't
as
like the
heroin.
whole injecty stuff.
Okay, now crack is probably up there for sure.
Yeah, crack's pretty fucking cool.
Crack is
Kirby
Not-
Vegan, what do you think about
Maybe
crack?
maybe a
Not enough
one-time
love for
crack type
MDMA,
deal.
man.
Quaaludes are pretty good as well.
Lewds are awesome. But cocaine and crack are two completely different types of drugs.
Yeah, we know that.
Let's not conflate the two.
What you want is some glue, right?
Are you like a cocaine addict who's like trying to justify it or something?
Nice
It's
straw
really easy to
man.
get
No, I'm not a
glue
cocaine
anywhere.
addict.
It's great.
I don't
Nice
buy
straw
it.
man.
You don't even need to buy it. You can just go into the shop and just open the top of the bottle and just start sniffing. It's free drugs.
Yeah, Araldite is a pretty good glue to get started on if you want to
Yeah.
get into
Oh
that.
my
man, you
gosh,
want
that is
Evo
like the
sticks.
worst. Glue, sniffing glue. I have worked with so many young people who have brain damage from that shit. That's so bad. Name how many people who take cocaine who have brain damage. They're usually in these higher echelons of jobs, and comparing cocaine to glue sniffing is completely incomparable.
But cocaine can kill you. Like you can be
Oh,
highly
yeah,
allergic
totally,
to it, so it can
totally.
just randomly kill you if you snort it. Like you're taking a huge
Well, it'll
risk.
just have an
You could just
LD50
die.
I
like
agree.
everything else.
I'm serious. You can just die. You can die because of a heart attack too.
I
Yeah,
know,
you
I
you
know, I
I
guys
know.
died because of
are
caffeine.
Yeah, I know. You know. I know. You know. I know you snort that
Plenty of
shit.
people die from
you guys
fucking
are
Red
speaking
Bull.
truth. I definitely think MDMA is probably the premium drug then.
Yes,
in that case.
MDMA.
No.
Damn it.
MDMA
Yes.
is so good.
MDMA is amazing. MDMA is my gateway to weed. It was brilliant.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You need something to sort of calm down at the end. You know, you're like, I've just been raving hard. I just need to chill now. Give me a pipe. There we go.
MDMA is like the poor man's cocaine.
MDMA is not a poor man's
Actually,
cocaine. It's a
MDMA and
sophisticated
cocaine
man's
is pretty good.
cocaine. It's the academics' cocaine.
Yeah, Sam Harris digs it.
Too right.
Yeah,
Oh.
one of the
What
best
happened?
drugs.
What happened to perspective philosophy? I literally went to the bathroom and then I came back and the whole argument was
Yeah, he's just getting some crack.
awesome. Awesome.
You're just getting a big bag of fucking crack.
I remember living in Brisbane, and just loads of people walking around with big bags of fucking speed just in front of them, and they're just snorting them in the middle of the street.
It's yeah. There is a huge meth problem.
It's just
Huge
funny.
meth problem.
Methamphetamines.
They're
Yeah,
like a
they've got,
fucking sack, like nothing in like conspicuous at all. Just like a bag full of white powder that's transparent, and you can see the fucking white powder in, and it's the size of their face, and they're just like shoving their face in it while they're walking through the town centre.
Sounds legit.
Like there was a few of them. Fucking
No.
Yeah, I think Australia did experience quite a severe meth problem, especially in like 20 years ago or something. I can't remember exactly when.
what was it in Fortitude? Is it called Fortitude Valley? If you know that suburb of Brisbane.
Yeah, Fortitude Valley. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that. You're completely
It was.
exacerbating. You're completely.
No. I had an office in
Yes,
there.
you
So
are.
I could see out of it. So I could see this. There was the same woman. She was there every day. She'd just be fucking walking along, and she just got this sack in front of her, and she'd just shoving her face in it, and like going, yeah. And then she'd start like jogging and starting like sort of head thrusting like a pigeon at people walking past her.
Sounds
That's
amazing.
like really mean, dude. Seriously, like for you to kind of, take that anecdotal evidence as what Brisbane is like. Brisbane's not like that at all. Like most people in Brisbane
2 years.
spend a lot of money on drugs. Trust me.
Spend a lot. They'll get too much fucking Centrelink, and they spend it all on ganj. Fucking crazy. Get so much free
Yeah,
money.
there is a lot of crazy people in Brisbane. I'm one of them.
Brisbane's great. I loved it.
Smart. If you did more ketamine, you would understand error theory a bit
I've done
better.
plenty of ketamine, lad. Actually, I'll have you know.
Okay.
Yes. Kitten
you-
tranquilizer. Everyone focuses on the fact it's a horse tranquilizer, but it's also a kitten tranquilizer. Okay. You just need to have a nice.
Did you ever go down the K hole?
No. I'm a responsible drug addict, or it used to be.
Yeah, once one of my
very well.
mates took a lot of ketamine and he ended up
Oh,
on
yeah.
the toilet, but it just happened conveniently to take place at a house. The party was at a house where the bathroom was. It was in London. They had a toilet, and the bathroom was so small that the sink was in front of the toilet on like the opposite wall. So, but it was so close that you could sit on the toilet and wash your hands in the sink. which was really handy because he was like shitting and puking at the same time.
There we go.
Oh,
Do you know the song "One Night in Hackney"? Techno tune.
No, I don't think I know.
Oh no. Oh, okay. Because I'm like I've been exposed to this culture, like going to Thetford Forest in Norwich and having illegal raves every weekend. There's a lot of ketamine that happens there, and a song called "One Night in Hackney" pretty much sums it up.
Okay, post it in Jukebox.
Yeah, 1 second. It's by Dave the drummer.
There's like
One
some
Night in Hackney.
rumor that ketamine like stays in your stomach forever.
Special K stays in your stomach. That
Yeah,
wouldn't
apparently
surprise
like
me.
it stays in your stomach forever, but
What's
I think that might be an urban legend, doesn't it?
what's the difference between ketamine and MDMA? I thought they were basically the same thing.
No, they're so opposite. Ketamine's
Really?
like being drunk, but physically, but your mind isn't quite as the same as being drunk. It's very much a sort of drunken feeling where you just basically can't stand up. You have to like touch the walls to be able to move, and you can get to a point where you just completely K-hole and you sort of black out and you go into sort of like a fucking sleepwalking state. Or just sort
Oh
of
yes,
shit.
actually, yeah.
MDMA is just pure happiness. You're just overwhelmed with joy and empathy and emotion. Unless you're doing E, which is probably laced with speed or some bullshit like or whatever. But proper
Yes, yes,
MDMA,
yes. Because
like
I've
some
had
nice
both.
purple crystals. Yes.
I have had both, but like I don't know, from memory, they kind of had the same impact on me, and that's why I'm asking it. But maybe it is.
Have either of you done pure just ketamine, nothing else?
Yeah.
Have you got taken off it to go into a K-hole?
Nope. Wait a minute.
I think
Hold
I'm
on.
going to stop the.
Yeah, don't do the recording, please.
I know. I was
Hang on,
gonna
hang on.
say,
Let,
Just
let me
realised it.
let me disconnect the bot.
I mean, I haven't.
This is all from my youth, though. I haven't done anything for God knows, like 6, 8 years.
But this is the whole issue. It's like just because something is